Would you ruin a $6,000 drum set if it made it 6,000 times better? Well, I did, so let's find out why and hear the results. Ooh. Almost 20 years ago, I bought my first drum set for $10. And it looked and sounded like a $10 drum set. Throw it away! Thank goodness I've had the last 2 decades to figure out what a drum set should sound like and look like, too. It's taken me so many long, hard hours to figure out how to get drums to sound the way that I want them to sound like, the way that they sound in my head. And for many of those years, there's been one guy helping me get that sound. Now, I'm going to let you into my little secret mystery man in a little bit, but we got to get into the important part here. Let's talk about why I ruined some really expensive drums. Drums are some of the oldest instruments in the world, and the drum set as it looks today is over 100 years old. Despite having a century to really dial in what this instrument should sound like, that doesn't mean when you get a new drum set out of the box that thing is going to sound exactly like what you want it to sound like. Doing, doing. From one set to another, so many things change. The woods, the heads, the hoops, the bearing edges. There are just so many variables that go into determining what your drums are going to sound like. Personally, I was so fortunate to get into all these nitty-gritty details as I worked in a music shop in college, Music Go Round in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And when I was at that shop, I had to figure out how to sell $100 used drum sets. And here's the thing is, a mom or a dad who's coming in to buy a drum set for their kid isn't going to buy that $100 drum set if it sounds bad. So the first big skill I learned at Music Go Round was how to tune any drum to make it sound awesome. Just learning that skill is going to get you pretty far as a drummer. But even with that, your ear is going to change over time. But you might be asking, Tim, what the heck does that mean? What do you mean your ear is going to change over time? Think about the way that you listen to music. What was your favorite song when you were 4, 5, or 6 years old? Do you remember what that song sounded like when you were a kid? Now, all these years later, how does that song sound to you? Probably quite a bit different. Just as an example, I like to think about how my drum sound on social media has evolved over the years. It started off with raw camera audio. And that sounded okay, but it was not good. And then I learned how to put some different mics around the drum set and have multiple mics going, but I really didn't understand how to mix them. Nor did I understand the importance of things like room mics. But then I did learn about room mics, and I learned more about processing and mixing drums, and slowly things got better and better. My ears changed and adapted so that as I got better, the baseline for what good was became higher. That is how an ear changes. Now, where when I was a kid, I would listen to bands like Minor Threat or the Ramones, punk music. I thought that stuff sounded awesome, but it was made years ago on tape, and now today, I'm producing stuff with computers and tons of mics and all the bells and whistles you could ever ask for, so I can produce something at really a much higher quality than you might be able to produce 40, 50 plus years ago. Now, as that baseline for what sounds good in my recording continues to rise, so does my level of what I think good drums should sound like straight up to my ear in the room. And that's why I ruined this $6,000 set of drums in front of you. But we should probably define what ruining these drums really entails. You ever play hacky sack with a tom-tom? Not a good idea. When you buy a brand new drum set, it usually comes with a warranty from the manufacturer. Basically, all that warranty covers is for a certain time period. If something goes wrong with these drums because of something the manufacturer did wrong when they were making them, then they'll make it right. You know, they'll try to fix the drums or replace them or whatever. Now, the issue I run into is that when you modify these drums in any way, that warranty is donezo. You have no more warranty to rely on. So I would define losing your warranty as really ruining the drums. So let's talk about how I did that. This is where that drum mystery man comes in. My friend Derek Mantz owns MKE Drum Co, where he restores vintage drums, sells vintage drums, and sometimes he'll even build brand new drums from scratch. And I've taken advantage of all sorts of his services over the years. What's so special about what Derek does is he is so many generations deep in his family of being a carpenter and a craftsman. And he's one of a very few people in the world who have taken that skill set and applied it to drums, drum building, and drum restoration. Having someone like Derek in your life to help you further dial in your drum sound time and time and time again is so crucial to helping you grow as a drummer. It's just such a special thing. And we're going to talk to what Derek did to these drums in a little bit. But first, I'm going to tell you what I did before I brought him up to Derek. The easiest parts that you can change out on your drum set to get a different sound are the hoops. The drums that you're looking at here today are my Ludwig Classic Maple Kit in Heritage Green finish. The 20, 12, and 14 are from 2018. I bought them directly from Ludwig. And the add-on 10 and 16-inch tom I got earlier in 2023 directly from Ludwig again. Stock, those drums come with a little bit of a heavier hoop, a 2.3 millimeter triple flange hoop. Now, that's a great hoop for most drummers, but I'm not most drummers. I'm a vintage drum nerdy geeky dude guy. Look, Mom, I'm Benny Grab. Now, on the drums of the 60s and 70s, those vintage drums, you're going to find 1.6 millimeter hoops. Now, what's so special about that little bit of a difference in thickness? It's not huge, but by reducing the mass of the hoop, by creating a lighter hoop, you let the drum shell create more of the tone than the hoop. And you let the combination of the drum head and the drum shell create more of the tone than the hardware itself, which to me is important because if I'm going to pay a ton of money for a drum set for these pieces of wood, I want to hear those pieces of wood that I paid a lot of money for. And it's not just about tone. This is about feel too, especially on your snare drum. When you use a thinner hoop on your snare drum, especially a triple flange over something like a die cast hoop or a stick saver or even a single flange hoop or something like that, it's so much more easier on your wrist and your fingers and your joints if you're laying into your backbeat. I tend to hit a lot of rim shots with my backbeat when I'm laying into a groove. I'm playing pretty hard and I'm laying into that rim for the backbeat. So it's more forgiving for whatever reason to hit one of these cheap hoops than some of the more expensive, sharper or heavier hoops. Yeah, okay, so we talked about hoops, but what about drum heads? I know you frickin' people want to hear about drum heads. Yeah, all right, I'll talk about drum heads. Now, when it comes to transforming your sound on the drum set, obviously nothing is going to do it more than drum heads. That is plain and simple. And for me, I have been loving Evans drum heads. My setup is pretty simple. I use the Onyx heads, top and bottom on the tom, and that helps me produce a warm, lower pitched note than I would with other heads. It's way easier to tune than other heads too. And if it falls out of tune, it's so much easier to get by through a song because it generally doesn't sound as bad when it's detuned or having a tuning issue. So love them. And they last forever. You could literally use these heads. If you hit the right way, you could use them for years. For the kick drum, on the front, I'll generally use a G1 or G2 resonant head with a painted head that's done by my partner. Why? Because it looks cool. They sound good too. The only thing that you're going to see added on the front is that I use a Gibraltar felt strip, and that's to kind of cut the transient, just to make sure that that note is quick, in and out. On the kick batter, I use an EQ4 frosted more often than not, and that actually came at the recommendation of the product manager over at Evans. Evans has such a wonderful team over there. They are so knowledgeable and so nice and so attentive to their artists and consumers. I have nothing bad to say about their team. They're really awesome people, and I'm so fortunate that they were so good to me on sort of recommending all these different heads that might sound like me, and that EQ4 frosted certainly sounds just like me. The only thing I tend to recommend with kick heads, whatever brand you use, is that you use something better than the included impact patch that usually comes with any brand's kick head. So with my Evans one, I bought the double kick patch. It's like a nice black cloth that you can buy from Evans. They're not that expensive, and they make that head last literally years instead of months, because I have a heavy foot. I got a big freaking foot over here, people, all right? When I was 10 years old, I was wearing a size 12 men's US shoe. My dad said I did not have feet. He said I literally was just rocking skis. My feet were so big. So listen, I got a heavy lead ski worth of a foot down here, and I would have put my foot through this kick head had it not been for that impact patch. So spend a few bucks on an impact patch. I promise it's worth it. Snare drum is where things get a little bit tricky. I like all sorts of different snare drum tones, which means I'm gonna need to have an assortment of different snare drum heads. If I want a really classic snare drum tone, my favorite head is the Evans UV2. It sounds like your classic 1-ply head, but it's 2-ply, so you can achieve a little bit of a lower pitch if you want, but it tunes up really nicely, and because it's 2-plies, that thing lasts much longer than your standard 1-ply head would. If I want something a little more modern, the EC Reverse Dot is a great all-around drum head, but I tend to use the heavyweight head and the heavyweight dry head a ton. There's nothing else like it on the market. There is nothing that sounds quite like that. Just listen to this head. Other ways to change the tone a little bit on your drum set might be removing the gaskets on the toms, but you have to be really careful with that. Some drums you cannot do that on. Some of the drums I have that done on, the 12 and the 14. I will be doing that on the 10 and the 16. I'm just lazy and I haven't done it yet. But I purposefully left the gaskets on the kick, and that's because I always want a quick note on the kick. I might want a longer note on the toms, and I can do that without the gaskets on there. It's a very, 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 very slight change, but with that little bit of added resonance, I can always have more resonance, but if I start at a point with, let's say 40% resonance, I can only go down from there. If I start at a point of 60% resonance, now I have more room to work with. You can always go down, you can't go back up. So now you know all the easy ways to modify your drums. You can change your heads, change your hoops, take some gaskets off, do this, that, and the other. How the heck are you gonna ruin your freaking drums? We're gonna do it right now, baby! Derek Mantz just beautifully ruined this 10-inch tom and my 16-inch floor tom over here. And how did he do that? By recutting the bearing edges. Now, I know you might be asking, Tim, what the heck is a bearing edge and why is it important? I'm going to tell you. The bearing edge is where the drum head meets the drum shell. And very minor differences in the way that it's shaped can create very major differences in the way that your drum sounds. When I got these drums from Ludwig, they came with a single 45 bearing edge. That means that the outside was straight and then the inside was like a 45-degree angle that they had cut. That's a super sharp edge. And the issue that I had under microphones is that it sounded kind of like a basketball or a kickball. No, not like that, like this. What? No, like this. Yeah, that's it. So anyways, I took these drums to Derek to get a rounder edge. The rounder the shell is, the more contact there's going to be between the drum shell and the drum head. And the more contact you have between those two elements of the drum, the more you're going to be pulling the tone out of the drum shell itself. And again, if we're paying $6,000 for some freaking drums, I want to hear the wood. I want to listen to my little wood boy. What do you say to me? Boing, boing. So the way Derek accomplishes this for me is we create what's called a 45 round over edge. We keep that edge that Ludwig cut on the interior, and then we create like a 2-ply round over on the outside, meaning that 2 plies on the outside of that drum are going to be rounded over so that we create just a little bit of contact between the drum head and the drum shell. So first, Derek has to make a rough cut on the outside of each of my drums. Then he sands them down on this glass table so they're totally flat. And we better make sure that these drums are flat, because if they're not, then the drum head isn't going to sit well on anything, and it's just going to sound like garbage. So now that we get through that part, Derek goes and sands this outside by hand. And what's so crazy is he does this by feel. He knows the shape of this really small piece of wood. He knows that it's perfect by feel. And that's why I go to Derek, because all these years of working on drums, all these generations of his family doing this type of work are inside of him. He's got the magic touch. This dude is incredible. Not only does Derek fix these drums, this dude has been a drummer for so many years. And the second you walk into his house, that becomes obvious. What's also obvious by walking into this guy's house is that he can build, fix, or modify just about anything that you put in front of him. He's fixed up every room in his house. He built a pool. He's even got the creative mind to build his own logos. There's literally nothing that Derek can't do. Okay, well, maybe he can't do gravity blasts like me, but that's about it.
All right, we're here to do some gravity blasts today. Are we ready? Okay. It's as easy as...
How do you like that hair I had when I was a kid? Now, other than that gravity blast stuff, Derek has me beat. And I feel so indebted to him for how good I sound. His skill set, his work is a big reason why I'm still doing what I do today, and why I'm doing what I do today for such a big audience, why I've done the work I've done for Disney, Fox, all these different jobs I've had, I think are because of Derek. He's a part of it. This guy has made me sound my best. Some of the best businessmen have a tailor for their clothes. And the best musicians, especially drummers, have a guy like Derek to make them and their instruments sound like them. Now, did the work that Derek did technically void the warranty from the manufacturer and technically destroy the drum set I have? Yeah, it did. But what I got in return is the drum set that's going to the grave with me. These drums are some of the drums that I've kept for the longest over anything else. I don't think I've ever had a drum set longer than I've had these. And the reason is that because they sound so good. They sound so much like me. And because I've designed them the way that they are, they will continue to evolve with me in my sound. As drum heads evolve, I can continue to put new drum heads on here, and the bearing edge is designed in such a way that I can put anything on here and they'll be a chameleon. They will sound like whatever those new drum heads sound like, with this classic Ludwig maple shell made in the same shell machines that they made Ringo Starr's drum set back in the 60s with. This is a timeless drum set, and Derek is the one who helped me make it future-proof. I'm gonna be playing these until the time that I am literally a grandma. Hello, it is me, Grandma Dimbo. Well, that was a little bit scary, but I hope that wasn't as scary as you thought it might be if I was actually destroying $6,000 worth of really cool drums. Now, as you grow into your drumming or drum collecting, you gotta get yourself a Derek too. And really, if you're in the United States, you should take advantage of them. I'm willing to share. Ship this dude your drums. He'll work on them the same way he works on mine, and he can ship them right back to you. Listen, I can't recommend Derek enough. This guy is a miracle worker. One time on the north side of town, I went up there and I bought a sky blue pearl Ludwig kit from the 1960s. And the problem with these drums is that the bass drum had been water damaged. I could literally push up through the wrap like it was paper. It was such a bummer. And I brought it to Derek and I said, these 2 toms are really nice, but the bass drum, not so much. Can I trade it to you for some work? And he was more than obliging. And so what Derek wound up doing is he put on his thinking cap because he really didn't want to let this bass drum go. Sky Blue Pearl is one of his favorite finishes. And he really, you don't want to throw out a drum, especially when it's that old and you have the whole kit there. You want to fix it. He literally made a jig, a little machine tool for him to put this drum back together with some wood filler or whatever and got this drum back into shape and sturdy and usable. I couldn't believe it. Now, does that take hours and time and creativity and all sorts of things? Yes, it does. But he did it. And Derek has done that many times for many of my own drums. This is a snare drum that means so much to me. It was owned and refinished by one of my drumming mentors and his wife. This WFL has such crazy paint on it. It's got this beautiful sun design. It has the throw off was replaced with this great Slingerland TDR throw and plate on the back here. And the design here that goes around the drum was actually made with some leggings from his wife. They put it on here and used that for the pattern, which is just crazy. It turned out really good, I think. But the problem I had is that the drum shell was caving in on itself because it was so thin. So what Derek did, I just said, Derek, I really want to save this drum and make it playable. So he created some wood slats that sit on the inside and reinforce the shell, got new screws that go into the lugs, and as simple as it is, that fixed the whole problem. It takes that creative mind, and it's creative in a way that I can't do. I can be creative on the drum set. I can't necessarily be creative in a way to fix things like this. Derek can be, and he always has been with my instruments. So whether it's saving a bass drum out of an attic that I found on the north side of Kenosha that he put into his personal collection, or saving a drum that I want to keep forever, Derek has been just such a wonderful, wonderful person to have in my life, and I'm so appreciative for everything that he's done for me. Head over to MKEDrumCo.com if there's something you think Derek might be able to do for you, and I promise whatever happens, that dude is going to make you just smile beyond what you can even imagine. Tell Derek I sent you. He's going to take care of you. I can tell you that. So I hope you got a kick out of this, and I hope you learned something, and until next time, be good.